welcome back to Beyond the Screen, the Family Connection podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Samantha Hayes, educator, parent, and founder of Beyond the Screen Families. And today we have a special friend with us. Her name is Allyssa. She is a mom, a licensed marriage and family therapist. And when not with her clients or family, she enjoys playing pickleball with friends, spending time with her German Shepherd, Josie, and being in the outdoors. Welcome, Allyssa.
Thank you.
So, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your work? Because
Okay.
I know about you, but everybody else probably does not.
Right. Absolutely. So, again, my name's Allyssa. I have two young kids, 7 and 12 years old, and we live in Costa Mesa, California. I now have a group practice that I work for in Huntington Beach. So I see individual clients in my practice. But my background before that was working in addiction therapy and eating disorder therapy for several years. And I've seen kids, adolescents, young adults, and now I find myself at this point in my life mostly seeing adult women. So we talk a lot about parenting, about life transition at this age that we are all at, but also the joys and the pitfalls of parenting, the confusion that comes with it, the need for boundaries, all of the fun stuff that comes with parenting.
What drew you? I mean, so there's multiple groups that you've worked with in there.
Right.
What has drawn you to work? And I think especially with families, because even hearing you talk, you're speaking with women and parenting. What's drawn you
Right.
to that arena versus everything else you could have
Right.
done?
I think it kind of came by just chance when I was I worked quite intensively in eating disorder treatment center and an addiction treatment center. And they're both very similar, but the family dynamic was such a crucial, important part of that for the therapists. So the families had to be involved and they were encouraged to be involved. So there was a lot of family work that was done. So it was really interesting because we would have the client who was struggling with an eating disorder or with an addiction, but we would also get to bring the family in, whether it was siblings, parents, wife, husband, kids sometimes, for our older adult clients. And it was so helpful to kind of get the perspective from all different sides and be able to learn how to navigate that in a way where everybody felt supported and we really kind of had to get to the root of the issue where how everybody needed to change, not just the person who was there for therapy, but the whole family as a whole.
Mhm.
So I think that is initially what drew me into the family role. And then I went through a period of seeing kids and teens. I still see teens sometimes, late older teens. And now as I've gotten older, my clientele seems to have gotten older, and now they're coming for from their perspective, the issues with parenting, with being in, navigating marriage and parenting in a really busy season of life.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it. I love how you're talking like really the holistic piece of it. Like you're really working with the whole instead of just
Yes,
like one tiny aspect of
absolutely.
stuff. Yeah.
I think it's so important, and absolutely. So if there's a teen or a kid in the office, I want to hear from the
Hmm.
parent and I want to see them together and see that dynamic.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So the most exciting thing, I think for me, because you posted and I was like, is this book that you just wrote, Even Animals Go to Therapy. And I don't know, I think maybe everybody needs to read it, like even adults, because there's such a like, ooh, therapy. But I am definitely a therapy advocate. So what inspired you to create this?
So I think that idea came from a couple of different places. So first of all, of course, my work with adult clients as they're more and more over the past year or 2 years are coming in going, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed on how best to navigate there's so many issues that are there. Like my child is being bullied. My child is on the spectrum. My child is really struggling to make friends. My child is struggling because my husband and I are getting a divorce because we moved. There's so many things. And so much of that has been coming into my office. And so I felt like that was really important because ultimately they're the ones that are in therapy, but I always encourage them. Have you considered having your daughter or your son go to their own therapist or go to a family therapist? Whether it's the school counselor to start or whether it's, a private practice therapist. And so often that is what happens. And it's really wonderful to see the results of what come from that. But part of navigating that, of course, is oftentimes my clients will say, okay, I talked about it with my child, but they're like, absolutely no, I am not going to counseling. So a lot of what we'll do in therapy is kind of the role playing that we do of, okay, let's do it from this perspective. Let's do a little bit of psychoeducation from a kid's perspective of how it can be helpful, how it's not a scary thing, but it's actually like, oh, I'm just adding somebody to my team to help me with some new tools.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of it is that. And then the book itself, the little girl in the book is Lily, and Lily is my daughter. And so that little girl, Lily, is based loosely on my daughter, Lily. And she absolutely, her stuffed animals are so precious to her. And this book also came out of a situation a couple of years ago that had arose when her beloved auntie died of cancer, and it was hard on the whole family, but Lily really internalized it. And there were a lot of fears that came up, a lot of fears of not wanting to be away from us, being
Mhm.
scared that something was going to happen to another one of her family members. Every time somebody was sick, she would get so scared that it was something bigger than it was. And that was something to navigate through. So the book also came a little bit from that experience as well, a little combination of both.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love what I love about it is like the fact little kids love stuffies, right? And it's so real with like the bear who's getting angry or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Like the bear, like smart choice there, the bear who's getting angry, but like and just that understanding of like it's therapy's not bad. We like it's something we all can do and we all can like get support, as you said, from that, no matter how old we are.
hmm it's so true. It is so true. And I think adults and children alike are can be fearful of therapy, but it also starts with us because we're role modeling for our kids. So we role model to them that it's not scary and that it's just something beneficial for us. Then they're watching us and they'll follow suit and won't be scared.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so let's talk about emotional health for kids. Um, why do you think emotional wellness conversations are so important for children today?
Right. So, oh my goodness, where to start? Because I'm sure there's so many different avenues. I think being a child is hard for anyone, right? I mean, for any of us, when we were growing up, we don't know how to express how we're feeling. Sometimes we don't even know how to put the words onto what we're feeling, something that may have happened at home or at school. And so some of it is really important so that we can assign a word other than just happy or sad. Um, and we're also living in a really different time too. We have
Hmm.
pressures that, especially for the older kids, like as we're going into later elementary and those tween and teen years, we're living in a different world where there are pressures out there that we didn't have when we were younger, like social media, YouTube, the internet at the fingertips, bullying via text message, via chat rooms. Oh my goodness. Oh my,
Yeah.
some of the stories I hear, my heart breaks. And I'm so thankful that we didn't have that layer growing up, but our kids do.
Hmm.
And so I think that because of those added pressures, I think that emotional intelligence piece and talking about emotions has to start really young. So we build a foundation for them before they even get to that place where all these other pressures are going to arise.
Hmm. So are those, if you're thinking about like the common emotional struggles, is that struggle with all of the new added layer what you're seeing the most common, or are there other things that are,
I think that's a good question. I think a lot of it is that, but
yeah.
also I think as parents, you're a parent too. I think we could do all the work and we can read all the books, but we as parents, we have blind spots too. And
Absolutely.
we're we're just taking generationally what was handed to us. And the hope is that through each generation, we're getting healthier and we're making changes. But there are ingrained patterns that we bring in from our own family of origin, from our own trauma, from our own experiences. And so, oftentimes in the therapy room, there will be things that come up, and a client might say, "I'm just doing everything possible to really bring out um, my daughter to talk to me." And then she'll say something, and I'll be like, "Oh, what if we worded it differently?" And she's like, "I've never even thought about that because that's just always how my mom or dad said it to me." So I think sometimes there's blind spots that we have and how we portray talking about emotions, or how we ask, or
Mm,
maybe we ask close-ended questions instead of open-ended questions. So I think there's always something to learn from that,
mhm,
um, to elicit more communication from kids. And sometimes they're scared. We oftentimes families are in a home of, we brush things under the rug, or we don't talk about the hard things, or this misconception that anger is bad. And
mm.
anger, that's why Benny the Bear is so important in the book. Anger is a really healthy natural emotion. We all feel it. And the worst thing we can do is deny that we feel angry. It's how we express it that's important.
Mhm.
So that's one of those emotions, anger, that is universally talked about with children, with teens, with tweens in the room. Like, where's anger for you? How do you express anger? How do your parents express anger?
Yeah, really looking at the patterns, like even because you talked about like the things we're carrying with us, even, right? So then if you have a kid and you're like, how do your parents express anger? I mean, that's just something like it's becoming a learned behavior.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm. And now I need to do some introspection on my own.
On the topic of anger, the best tool, and you can just Google it, anybody can find it. My favorite tool working with kids, teens, and adults is the anger iceberg. I would say the very beginning of every single session, I say, here's the anger iceberg, just upload it onto your phone. Like, print it out, put it on the refrigerator, or keep it in your phone. The anger iceberg is such a great tool for parents and kids to talk about. So when a kid comes home really angry, the parent can look at under the anger iceberg and go, "Okay, so you're angry. Now pick one or two of the feelings underneath anger
Mm,
and let's talk about that."
awesome. And giving them the language too, the common shared language is powerful in so many ways.
So many ways.
Yeah. So how, if I'm the parent, and I mean, you talked about having blind spots and that kind of thing, what are some cues or signs that let me know that my child might be struggling, even if they're not directly saying it, because they've learned to push it under the rug, or it's coming out in a different way, or you know what I mean? So what as a parent could I look for?
Right, right. Kids universally oftentimes exhibit physical symptoms as one of the first signs. So, tummy aches, headaches, suddenly not wanting to go to school as often. They might just say that they don't feel well, or their leg hurts, or their tummy hurts. But when it's sudden and all of a sudden there is a pattern happening, oftentimes that is an indicator. I mean, always rule out medical, of course, but if there's no origin to it, oftentimes that is really telling us something.
Mm,
They're psychosomatic, so kids are acting out how they feel through physical symptoms. So that can be our first symptom, oftentimes. And so I think it's really second nature for us as moms and dads to say, "Are you okay? Is something going on?" But kids don't know how to answer that. And usually they'll shut down and go, "No, no," or "Everything's fine." So those open-ended questions are really helpful for them in a place like a bedroom. So for Lily, it would be in her room with her stuffed animals. I would lay on the bed with her and say, "Tell me about, being curious. Tell me about your friend group lately. Tell me about what's been going on. Tell me," a couple of years ago, it was, um, "Tell me, have you been thinking about your aunt lately? Tell me what you think when so and so gets a cold or gets a flu." So just drawing out with those open ended questions, "Tell me,"
mhm,
when they're in a relaxed place can be helpful. So I think that sometimes the physical symptoms, and then just general irritability. Sometimes kids start acting irritable and there's not really a solid reason for it, but irritable, kind of like just irritable with mom, irritable with
mhm,
siblings. Um, I think looking at the pattern of when is it happening? Are you okay on the weekends? But then come the weekdays, suddenly that's when you have a tummy ache and you're not feeling great. Or for kids, if a certain friend's name comes up and they brush past it really quickly, that might be a sign that, oh, something might be going on there. Maybe there's a little bit of a friend drama there.
Hmm. Yeah, so I keep hearing like anything that's a little off, right? Like
A little off, right?
a little off, there might be something else, and or there might not, or
Mhm.
but then that's where you ask that open-ended question in what I heard you say that I think is so poignant, in a place that's comfortable to your child. So it's not perhaps in the car as you're driving, it's where are they comfortable and feeling safe? That's the place to do this.
100%. Because I think it's really common, myself included. I definitely do this where if I notice that one of my kids seems a little withdrawn or grumpy, we're right after as we're leaving school, I'm looking in the rearview mirror going, what happened? Did something
Yes,
happen today?
yes.
Are you okay? What happened? Did something happen with this? Did something
Guilty.
happen with that? And then they're just going, oh my gosh. First of all,
Yeah.
you're not even able to look at me right now. We're driving. We're just leaving school where something stressful happened. I don't answer. Nothing.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. So you should just giving them some downtime and take a walk, go to their room, maybe make it one-on-one so the whole family's not in on it.
Mm. Are there any, so I've heard, I mean, like I'm hearing so many good strategies that I'm like, I hope people are listening and picking up on the strategies about the safe space, the open-ended questions, that iceberg, the anger iceberg. Are there any ways, other ways, that you feel like parents can begin building that emotional awareness and everyday life with their kids?
Yes. So obviously, we are our children's greatest role models. For good or for bad, they are watching everything that we do. So they are watching how we interact with them. They're watching how mom and dad interact. They're watching how we interact with the different siblings, if they're siblings. They're watching everything. So I, and that is very stressful for us, that reminder of they're watching everything where we are their role models. But it's a good reminder for us. So just being really cognizant of that. So if we're their role models, we're also role modeling how emotions play out. So if I'm telling my kids, hey, I want you to be open with your emotions and how you feel, but then they're seeing me sad or mad, and then telling my husband nothing's wrong and being snappy or saying, I don't want to talk about it, well, that is so contradictory. So, and that can look like many different ways. I'm not saying to cross boundaries and divulge everything you're upset about in front of your kids if it's not appropriate, but that might look like, you're right, I am feeling a little angry today. Something happened at work or something with a friend. I'll talk to you about it later, but yeah, you're right. Something is going on. I am feeling a little bummed about it. And actually, I'm feeling disappointed or I'm feeling hurt so that they can see that.
Mm-hmm. Not
Um,
the I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm
right.
fine.
Right, because we're telling them, "Hey, talk to me," and then if they hear us going, "Fine, I'm
Yeah.
fine," well, that's really confusing.
Yeah.
One of and I do encourage families to do this. I know we're sitting together at the family table can be really hard with sports, and I think sometimes like families are two ships passing in the night. But anytime we're at the kitchen table together, eating dinner, we do something called GLAD, GLAD, and everybody has to answer. So it is tell me
Mm.
something you are grateful for from the day, something you learned today, something you accomplished today, and something that delighted you today. So instead of it just being thrown at the kids, it is the parents have to answer, the siblings answer, everybody does it. And it's a really good jumping off point too to talk to kind of get an idea of what's going on with your kids because they're more likely to divulge more with something like GLAD than they are with how was your day? Because then, they're just like, fine.
I love that. Plus it promotes a screen-free dinner. So I
Yes.
love that connection piece is happening, intentional connection. I do something similar. We don't do it at dinner, but before bedtime, or like right before we're getting into bed, we do, what was your favorite part, your least favorite part, and what are you most proud of?
I love that.
And
I
that's
love
it. It's like what you're talking, like it's every single day. We go back and forth, sharing, and then that's how we end the day. So
I
yeah,
love that.
yeah, I
And I
like
think
that.
from what I understand too, is kids are the most at ease and comfortable right before bedtime. So oftentimes you'll hear a mom saying, "My kid didn't want to talk to me all day," and then suddenly when I'm ready to go to bed, they're like, "Hey, I need to talk." But that's like, their minds are starting to wind
Mhm.
down and they're feeling more comfortable. So I love that you do that before bedtime. That's such a great time to promote that.
Yeah, sometimes it leads to long conversations, and then I'm like,
Mhm.
okay,
Yep. Uh-huh.
okay.
Okay, we're both going to bed a little later than we thought, but
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about the book, because it normalizes therapy, and we've talked a little bit about why that's so important. But I'm curious if you have any other thoughts on that aspect, and then pairing with that, like misconceptions that families have about going to therapy,
right.
because I'm sure there are a lot.
There's so many. So as far as, I guess, where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start with the book or the?
Wherever you want,
Okay, I'll
tie
start.
them
No,
all
so
in. I don't know.
so I think, that was a perfect wording, the misconceptions. What I have found, there's so much deconstructing that happens in therapy. So when an adult comes in, and they're saying, "Oh, I need help navigating my marriage and and my parenting style and all of that." I'll say, "Okay, we're going to get to that, but we have to go backwards first." So the first couple of sessions, we go backwards into family of origin, and that is so, so important because how we were raised and that how we saw role modeling happen, any trauma that happened, anything negative or positive that occurred in childhood, whether it was in the home or at school, absolutely shapes us to how we interact as an adult. So even though sometimes they're like, "Oh, but I has nothing, my family of origin has nothing to do with my struggles now as a parent or as a wife," I'm like, "Oh, but it does," because sometimes it's generational. So like generational and cultural. So oftentimes there's generational and cultural beliefs about mental health and therapy that is just handed down through time. Maybe not even overtly, maybe not even loudly, but just by nuance and by things that are said or not said. So oftentimes there is a very large stigma that is handed down without even realizing it. So sometimes looking at a family tree is really important. So, for instance, like we'll look at the mental health family tree to kind of get an idea of anxiety, of addiction, of depression, and that's important to see how those things were handled. So, one of my adult clients might say, "Well, my mom always just would disappear into the bedroom and just say that she had nervous spells." Well, now we know that's probably generalized anxiety disorder. Or my dad just really liked to fall asleep on the couch after drinking 12 beers. Okay, well, now we know that's alcoholism, but they weren't named. And we'll ask, "Okay, so did they get help for that?" No, 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 no. Maybe the message is, "No, no, we don't want the outside world to think anything is wrong with us. You just deal with it behind closed doors."
Mhm.
And so that is a message that is subtly handed down. So sometimes when adults and families come in, it is deconstructing that and deconstructing those myths, those stigmas, and then having to start fresh with, okay, how are you now going to break that generational cycle and present what healthy emoting and therapy and mental health is to not just for your kids, but for yourself too.
Mhm. Mhm. So, for parents who, I mean, maybe they haven't had therapy themselves, so there's that. Or maybe they have. How can they talk about therapy in a non-scary way? I mean, obviously, I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan of bibliotherapy, so or biblio, like, types of interaction. So this works for younger kids,
right.
but a teenager is not going to want to sit and read this book. And so, like, how can they do that?
Right. So I think that, that book is helpful in the sense of you're taking the messages from that and then you're making it into an older conversation. So
Mm,
most kids by now, so teens or tweens, they know what therapy is. They know what counseling is. Most of them have a school counselor on site too. which is really helpful because sometimes they are more likely to go to the school counselor first because they know them, they see
That's
them
scary.
by sight. So that is always a suggestion I have oftentimes first is, hey, why don't you reach out to the school counselor and maybe say like, my family's going through a lot, or we're going through a divorce, or there was a death in the family. Um, I'd love to see if you guys can connect. So I'm a big fan of school counselors too, if the child is amenable to that. Or sometimes they're like, I don't want to do any counseling anywhere near school.
Mhm.
But I think that asking questions, being curious, like, what do you think therapy is? What do you know about therapy?
Mhm.
And seeing what they say about it. So sometimes you'll hear a teen go, it's for crazy people. Like that's if you're crazy. Okay. And I think owning that and going, you know what? Maybe I used to think that too, or I had that wrong idea as well. But this is what I know about it. And I'm even willing to go to it. I had these thoughts and beliefs growing up, maybe that were handed down. But let me tell you why I wish I had gone and how it would have been helpful.
Mhm.
Offering, like, what would it be like? Would you like to do family therapy to start instead of going in all by yourself? Would you be willing to go with me? And maybe we'll do the first few sessions together.
I love
Talking
that.
about confidentiality, I think, teens and tweens are universally terrified of what people are going to think about them. Making sure that they know it is confidential, that your therapist will never say anything about it. I will never say anything about it. If you want to tell people, that's up to you, but this is confidential. Um, and I think just talking about, I think they think that they're going to go into a room and it's going to be really clinical and serious. And I think finding the right therapist is really important. But
Yeah.
I think making sure that they know, like, hey, listen, this person's just on your team. You guys may laugh. There may be times when you laugh. There may be times when you just talk about your day. There may be times when you talk about heavy things, but they're not there to just like write notes and analyze you. They're actually there to just help you out with some tools. If you take them, great. If you don't, you don't. But
Mhm.
they're there. And I think also offering that piece of it's going to be better than me doing it because I love you so much. I can't help but get emotional if you're having a rough time. I can't help it. Like, and then I
Yeah.
probably rile you up because I'm getting emotional. But this is somebody who is going to stay calm and you're not going to feel anxious that they're getting anxious.
Mhm.
So just like offering some of that, but asking them and being curious, like, what do you think therapy is? Like, tell me, what do you think it is?
Mhm. Mhm. You threw something in there that I think is important, and that's finding the right therapist. Um, and so I'm curious because, as an adult, I have my own rules about finding the right therapist, about what it feels like when I go into a session and stuff like that. But those are rules I've constructed through my own, therapy
Sure.
journey and everything. How do we help? And this wasn't even something I was planning on, but I was talking about, but how do we help our kids know that it's okay if you go to a therapist for after a couple of sessions, you're like, this doesn't click, and
Hmm.
then we're not giving up on therapy. We're just going to go find somebody who's a better match.
Absolutely.
How do we do that in a good way as a parent?
Right. So I mean, you really just explained it perfectly. And I think just telling them, like, hey, listen, we're going to give this, 2 or 3 sessions because I mean, it's awkward at first. You don't know this person. They're
Yes.
asking you really personal questions. Maybe you have a limit. Like, you know what? Let's try 3 sessions. At the end of those 3 sessions, if this really isn't a good fit, but you can also give me a really valid reason why, other
Yeah.
than just, I
I
don't
don't
want
like it.
I like it. Right. I think that's really important too, because we're talking about teens and tweens here. So if they can give a really valid reason, then listening to that and honoring that and going, okay, so if after 3 sessions this isn't working, let's work together to try to find somebody. So I think especially with that age demographic, I'm a big fan of helping them have some agency. So sometimes they're going to feel more comfortable if it's somebody who's recommended by somebody that they know. So um, for instance, there's 3 licensed therapists at our elementary school, and we like to recommend to each other because that way sometimes it's really nice to say, okay, so mom's therapist knows somebody that she
Mhm.
really likes. So let's try her because I trust my therapist. So if she's recommending somebody, I think we can put some trust in her. that she's not somebody totally random. And
Mhm.
then I am a big fan too of sitting down with your teen or tween and going through Psychology Today Therapist Finder.
Mhm.
And so I love Therapy Finder or yes, Psychology Today Therapist Finder. It's because it has the bios of therapists. You can filter it like as far as your insurance, distance from your house, what hours they take. But for teens and tweens, I think it is really helpful for them to sit down and look at the picture, read the bio underneath to see the language that that therapist is speaking in,
Mhm.
to give them some agency too. So you might say, all right, let's look at this together. What do you think? Like pick your top three that come up in our filter here. What do you think about that? Like what is appealing about the way that they're talking in their bio or about how they're appearing? Because some kids, they may, it depends. Some kids may want a young adult, so it feels a little more current,
Mhm.
whereas others might want that more maternal or paternal feeling of somebody who's a little older.
Mhm. I love that idea too of bringing them in to the fold, and because there's a lot of choice and empowerment that happens with that,
Right.
just naturally, when they're sitting and also going through it and being like, okay, I want to try this one for this reason, like that's empowering.
Right, exactly. And we know that that age group is very notorious for power struggles with
Yes.
adults and parents. So that's always really important to kind of give them within limits some boundary, not some boundaries, but some agency,
Yeah.
to make some decisions.
Okay, so I'm going to flip it a little. At Beyond the Screen Families, we talk a lot about connection and real life experiences and how powerful they are. Um, which is why I'm not an advocate for elimination of all screens. Screens have a place.
Right,
Screen heavy culture, which is what we live in currently,
right.
um, can impact a lot of things. How have you seen it impacting emotional awareness, regulation, any of those skills that are so important for life?
Right. Yes. So, oh my goodness, so much. There's of course what we talked about, the pressures of social media and that means Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. I'm sure there's some that I don't even know
Oh,
the name.
yeah.
So those are, so there's those, and then I'll talk about video games, which is a little separate. So but the social media and just the scrolling and the swiping and the constant influx of people, places, and things that you don't have any touch to, it's so flooding, and that aids to a lot of FOMO, right? The fear of missing
Hmm.
out. It
Hmm.
aids to a lot of hurt feelings and self-esteem issues. So especially when I worked in eating disorder therapy, I saw it a lot. And we had our version too. I grew up in as a teenager in the 90s, and back then it was magazine covers, and it was the
Yes.
rise of the supermodel, and that was when Kate Moss was such a big deal. So we had our own version back then of, oh my goodness, the idealized body, that is what you're supposed to look like. And now we have it in a different way, but it's 24/7. So you see it all the time of um, what a body should look like, how manicured you're supposed to be, how much money you're supposed to have. Um, it's coming in from all over the place. So that's for, oftentimes for girls and boys, there's the self-esteem issue. There is the, oh, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. There is the devastation of things that we didn't have to see when we were younger. Pictures of your group of friends at a party that you weren't invited to, and how
Yeah.
devastating that is. So it's so big. And they're so young to deal with that. So trying to, I agree with you. There's limits, right? There's limits, but I think starting off really young and those foundations of this is what screens are, and this is what could come up for you. It's not all just fun and games, but this is what could come up for you. And I want you to come to me if you find that something that you're seeing while you're scrolling is affecting you,
Hmm.
or if you see something disturbing that you don't know how to make sense of.
Yeah, that open conversation again, like just having that, being there, and it probably helps if you've set up those open conversations along the way that you've also talked about when other emotions come up, and then you're saying to your kid, like, if you see something, come to me if that's already been established, that probably helps your kiddo come more often than not.
Right. And I am a big fan as they get older and they do start to have whatever screen it is, an Apple Watch or an iPad, a phone when they get older. I am a big fan of talking to the other parents that they're friends with and trying to come up with a kind of unilateral game plan. Like, hey,
Yeah.
let's all like figure out boundaries around screens together so that the kids aren't coming home going, oh, well, so and so gets all these hours and so gets this or so and so gets that. It can be really helpful if the parents can kind of come together and go, yeah, let's set some universal boundaries about screens together.
Yeah. Yeah. That is part, the community aspect of it just reinforces that you're not an oddball.
Right.
Like we're all in
Exactly.
this together.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
And what were you going to say? I know you said video games too, and you were going to
Yeah.
talk about that separately. What were you going to say about video
Yeah.
games?
Feel like that hits even like that hits a deeper other level sometimes.
Mhm.
And I've seen young adults who see me in therapy and then adults who come in going, my kid is always in their video games, whatever it is, Roblox or Minecraft. And there can be a really deeper layer there. So there is gaming addiction. There really is, it's a process addiction. So like alcohol, drugs, food, video games are a process addiction that is actually being treated now. You can go get treatment for process addictions like video games. So there is the addiction component that I think some people absolutely get sucked into, where it's the endorphin rush, it's the high, it's the low, the winning, the losing. So I think there is the process addiction piece that we do need to keep an eye on. That's also shopping, video games, the other things that I mentioned, especially if addiction runs in the family. That is
Mhm.
a real addiction now. So I think really taking a look at that. But then there's this other side that hits a deeper level sometimes, which is I'm thinking of a couple of different young adults that I had where really underlying that incessant need to play video games was just the self hatred that they had of who they are in real life.
Oh,
They did not have good friends or they were being bullied. They didn't like how they looked. Maybe it was a self-hatred of how they look. And then they go onto these video games and they get to be whoever that they make themselves be oftentimes with these games. They get to be victorious. They get to have a certain body type. They get to have all the friends and there's other people on there giving them praise that they don't get in real life. And that is oftentimes what I see, which is like this underlying level um,
Mhm.
of deep pain. And these video games, in some ways, I get it. I can see why it becomes addictive because they probably don't love who they are in real life. But you know what? On Roblox or whatever it is, people really like them and they like themselves. And that is a great place to start therapy and for parents and preferably to find a therapist who is well versed in gaming addiction and process addiction because that's a really layered nuance.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't think I've ever even really thought about that aspect. Like the root of it is not what we're seeing on the top, the
Right.
addiction to the games. Like it's so deep. Um, and how the connection of games, when we were growing up and playing Mario, we weren't playing with anybody in some other location, right? Like you were playing by yourself or with your friend who was sitting right there next to you. So you weren't having that same kind of like need filled with the
No,
game
there
that
was
you're
just one
talking about here.
Mario, right? You were
Yes.
one Mario, one
Yes.
Luigi. Um, and there weren't other people that were chatting with you too. So now we have the chat boxes and they can talk to each
Yes.
other. There was nobody reaching out to you.
Oh,
Um, so that's very layered. And then of course, like the danger of that,
yeah.
that's a
Oh,
whole other
yes.
thing, right? That's a whole other ball game. But it can be really layered and nuanced. And underneath that is a lot of poor self-esteem that needs to be taken out of, oh, well, no wonder. It's almost that I think parents get really mad at their kids, like, just stop playing so many video games. Just go do something else. And looking at like, oh, why does my kid find so much more comfort being inside this little world over here than out there in the real world? And that's really telling. So, what I would encourage, I just talked about this with a client this last week because she was saying, oh, it drives me crazy. All of her Roblox. I just don't want to see it. Like she was saying that her daughter always says, oh, look what I'm doing. And now the mom is so resentful of the Roblox because her daughter's always on it. She's like, no, I don't want to see it. I'm like, oh, this is the place where you need to be curious. Like, take a deep breath, kind of don't let her see how much you hate it. I get it. It's disrupting the family, but get in there and be like, who are you in here? Like asking those
Mhm.
questions. Like, tell me, like, show me, who do you talk to? What do they say to you? Who are you? Like, what do you
Mhm.
like about who your character is when you are playing Roblox?
Oof.
What world are you creating in there? How is that world and the people you're interacting with different than our world over here and who you interact with every day? And being really curious about that can oftentimes bring up some really telling things.
Mm, that's such a good, like, I'm like, oh, that's powerful right there. Like the getting curious to find out what is it about it? What is it about this? And I think that's probably for everything, right? It's
Oh,
video
yes.
games, it's social, why do you want to spend hours just doom scrolling? Or you know what I mean? Like all of it, just being curious to find out what is it about that you're not getting in real life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That right there is a lot of what happens with video games that I see,
Mm-hmm.
especially.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. Okay, so if parents are listening today and they haven't taken one of the other millions of things that you've already given them, and besides going and buying the book, especially if they have a little one to help normalize therapy, what's one message that you would hope they would take away from our conversation today?
The two words that you just said 2 minutes ago, be curious. And we talk about that a lot in therapy. Be curious. Um, Open-ended questions. Be curious about what is happening in their world, whether it is about video games, whether it's what they're looking at on a screen, whether it is a slight difference that you've noticed, maybe how they're dressing differently, or a feeling like them being more withdrawn. Be curious. Tell me, why aren't I'm curious. Tell me about this new friend you're spending time with. Is there something happening with the old friend that you're not spending time with anymore? Just being really, really curious and trying to become well versed in language other than mad or sad, and
Mm-hmm.
really, really looking underneath that and teaching your kids about the other emotions. So, like I said before, the anger iceberg is amazing and is good for us. It is. And I will say, just a little other thing, the anchor iceberg is amazing for couples. So it's great for couples because we get mad, but really it's something else. And so I think using that concept of the anger iceberg, even if you don't use it, which is okay, mad is a secondary emotion, but there's like about 20 other emotions that are underneath it. Let's explore what that could be.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe explaining to your younger ones. They might go, what is disappointed? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's when you were hoping that something was going to work out one way and it didn't. Or you thought you were invited to something and you weren't.
Mm-hmm.
So really being curious and becoming well versed with language outside of mad or sad and building the vocabulary of those words, because that's going to start to build that foundation of getting under the layers a little bit more of like what's going on, like what are they feeling?
Mm-hmm. Well, Alyssa, I feel like I have had just a wealth of information given to me today, and I'm sure other parents who are listening are like, and they're like trying to take notes and everything like that. If they want to learn more about you, your book, all of that stuff, how do they find you or where
Yeah.
can they find you?
Okay, yeah. So the book is available on Amazon, and there is a Kindle version too, as we're talking about screens, right? But
Kindle's
it,
different. You're still, it's a book. Like,
it is. It can be kind of fun because the kids can also scroll up and down. So it is available via Kindle and paperback. So that's on Amazon. And then for me, so you can find me. I work at a group practice in Huntington Beach, down here in Orange County, and I'm part of a network of mm, several therapists that work over there. So we see clients in the office, and we see clients via telehealth. And so you can find me there, and the website for that is Insightful Matters. So just look up Insightful Matters Therapy Practice in Huntington Beach. And if you're looking for therapists, there's a great plethora of therapists. There's some that specialize in children, some that specialize in adults. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay. Awesome. I will link all of your stuff in the show notes in
Okay.
case anybody wants it so they can also just go and click, hopefully, and get the book and find you and all of those things.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Allyssa.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Here's to creating more moments that stick. Bye, friends.